I would like to open this event by recognizing that McGill University is on land which long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. We acknowledge and thank the diverse Indigenous people whose presence have enriched this territory on which peoples of the world now gather. Avant de donner le coup d'envoi à cet événement, permettez-moi de souligner que l'Université McGill est située sur un territoire qui a longtemps été un lieu de rencontre et d'échange pour les peuples autochtones, notamment pour les nations Haudenosaunee et Anishinaabe. Nous saluons et remercions les divers peuples autochtones qui ont enrichi de leur présence ce territoire, lequel accueille aujourd'hui des gens de partout dans le monde.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Marie-Josée Lamotte, or MJ, a lot easier, and I have the pleasure of being a professor of practice at Desautels Faculty of Management and also of overseeing the McGill Dobson Center for Entrepreneurship. Today, it is on behalf of both the Faculty of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences and the Desautels Faculty of Management that we will host a panel of very inspiring entrepreneurs, as well as welcoming a very well-known investor to debate the thrills, the journey that comes with building a business. For context, the McGill ecosystem has produced over the last decades a series of and a long list of successful entrepreneurs, some that you'll be meeting today shortly. The Dobson Center today brings together 450 McGill startups. These startups together have raised over $1 billion in pre-seed funding. They operate in 36 countries and have created over 6,000 jobs. It is exciting to see every day the significant contribution innovative companies built with purpose make to our economy. And it's a thrill to be able to be introducing you to two of these companies today. So to all of you budding entrepreneurs, alumni that are currently joining us from all continents, I would like to introduce you today to our panelists. Jamie Lee and Isabel Lam are co-founders of Remix Snacks and act as CEO and COO. I would also like to introduce you to Semer Saab, who's founder and CEO of Explorance. Joining our entrepreneurs today is the very well-known investor, Mr. Vincenzo Guzzo, who's president and CEO of Cinema Guzzo, and of course, the star on CBC's Dragon's Den. Without further ado, I would like to ask Jamie and Isabel a question. Jamie and Isabel, it is my understanding that the idea of creating and launching Remix Snacks came as you were undergrad at McGill Desautels. Can you tell us how that came about, the idea, and how did you go about launching your company at the very beginning?
Yeah, so Jamie and I started Remix back in our undergrad, our last year of the dietetics program at Mac campus. And so we always had this kind of spark for entrepreneurship. We had a little cookie jar business at the artisan fair at Mac campus, and that was really cool for us. And at the end, we were like, okay, let's enter the Dobson Cup. It's something that we wanted to do, our last hurrah. And so we kind of took our two passions of creating something that was healthy. As dietitians, we saw kind of the lack of nutritious snacks available, and then also that there was so much food waste in Canada. So we took those two things together and created what Remix Snacks is today.
And tell us a little bit about Remix. What does it stand for? How does it contribute to our society?
So at Remix, we have our first product line of bean bark. And so with bean bark, we have this double-sided mission of being as nutritionally simple as possible, utilizing our knowledge in nutrition, and then also being as environmentally responsible as well. So you'll see on our logo, it says responsible snacks. So bean bark is actually a chocolate bark. And so if we think about the competitors that we normally see at grocery stores, you'll see a lot of nuts included in chocolate. So we don't include nuts, instead we use beans. And I remember the year that we launched, it was actually the year of the pulses. And so that's how we learned a lot about the nutrition profile of beans, of lentils, things things like that. And so we decided to incorporate that into chocolate, which is something that a lot of people love and that's a lot of people know about, that snack on. I think it's actually one of the top 3 leading snack categories in Canada. So utilizing beans and upcycled fruit, we used to pair up with supermarkets for second grade apples. We incorporate these fruit into our snacks. So then we have our 3 ingredient bean bark with chocolate, beans, and fruit.
Wonderful. So what were those invaluable resources you had to tap into to be able to launch a company? So you mentioned you participated at the Dobson Cup that gave you the basics of what to do, but how did you go about it afterwards to inspire some entrepreneurs that may be listening to you right now and would like to be you in a couple of years?
I think coming from science backgrounds, we were a little bit lost for sure as to even how to write a business plan and go around pitching. So Dobson really gave us that community to be able to tap into mentors and different people within the faculty as well, and the Desautels faculty to teach us and guide us and look over our plans. And then from there, they then introduced us to more people within their network. So really networking, I think, was key for us to be able to meet as many people as possible, connect with as many different companies as possible, and learn from their different experiences.
That's great. Thank you. Samar, I'd like to ask you a question. Your journey at the very beginning was quite different. If I'm not mistaken, you were actually already working in the tech industry for 10 years before you decided to launch Explorence. How did this come about, and why did you leave the industry to start to be an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. So basically, I would always, I'd like to say after the fact that I wanted to reverse engineer success and try to build it on my own. So I started with very large companies and consistently worked for smaller and smaller companies. The reality is what motivated me to build Explorence was that I was getting a little bit tired of living a double life, one where what you do for business and what you do in personal life never really match. This notion of the end can justify the means at work, but doesn't have to, so I just was sick of that, and I felt that maybe we could bet on building role model organizations that hopefully would succeed at the time, and where the ends don't justify the means, where, we can just go in and be ourselves no matter what angle we're looking at and build something more around notions of trust and reciprocity.
That's really interesting. Tell us a little bit, what does Explorence do?
So basically, our main obsession is to ensure that we're supporting higher education institutions and employers to listen more and listen better to their employees. So at the heart of what we do is really supporting the voice of the student, the voice of the employee. One, to inform organizations so organizations can succeed and better engage, give better engagement experience and inclusion for everybody. And 2, to be able to provide people a very personalized journey in their life. So from the moment I start studying till the day I retire, we want to make sure that we're giving the insights that help them make sure that every decision they make is going in the right direction, so they have a good story to tell. So it's all mainly around the notion of feedback solutions to support employee experience, employee engagement, and inclusion. Same for students.
That's interesting. So for many of us, the last 18 months have been particularly difficult. Would you say that was the case for Explorence? And now that you look back at this 18 months, would you do something differently to be more pandemic ready moving forward?
Yes, absolutely. So, there's no question that the pandemic brought difficulties and everybody experienced difficulty their own way. My personal difficulty is represented in this. We're doing this in a virtual setting. I would have loved it and appreciated much more if people were able to reconnect and be social again. However, it gave us a lot of opportunities in stepping back. A lot of people got to reassess their life, got to reassess the balance between work and their personal life. And I have a feeling that over time, it will pay dividends in terms of in social credits or social gain. If I look at how we've done it, obviously when the pandemic hit, we did like many other companies, said, let us focus on resilience. Let us make sure that the pandemic does not affect us. And if I ought to do it today, I would have bet on anti-fragility instead of resilience, which means how do we find opportunity in that chaos or that challenge and actually thrive with it. And this is exactly where we're at now. You know, chances are we're going to get into another episode of God knows what, lockdowns, etc. soon. And the reality is we're not just going to wait for the pandemic to end. How do we thrive on it? How do we create opportunity from it? How do we be one of these organizations, and very few of them succeeded to do that, that actually can produce very positive results and don't just brag about the fact that they've survived it, but they've actually thrived from it.
It's really interesting. Isabel and Jamie, you must have lived a very different past 18 months as well with Remix Snacks. How has that impacted you? And mostly, what did you learn from it? And what would you recommend for new entrepreneurs who, like you, will want to start while they're at McGill their own companies? Would you tell them to build it differently than what you did? Would you tell the Dobson Center to show and accompany them differently than what you received?
Yeah, so a really big pivot that we had right in the beginning of the pandemic was switching from retail to e-commerce. This was huge because we were focusing a lot more on mass groceries, in-person demos. You know, me and Isabel were taking turns weekly to do demoing sessions, to talk to our customers, to get feedback that way. And then when COVID hit, all of that was sort of shut down. Even to this day, a lot of groceries are not allowing sampling products in packaged samples. So then we were still a new product. We still needed to get the word out there. And so another way we used that was through an e-commerce platform on Shopify. And we didn't really focus on this before, but it kind of enabled us to, learn about e-commerce, learn about how to set up a website, how to set up fulfillment processes, operations to sell online. And so we quickly did a lot of research on that, started a Shopify website, and then launched it that way. So I'd say if anyone is looking to start a company that can be sold, like either a service or a product online, that would kind of be the way to go for right now anyways. And then leveraging Facebook ads, social media, e-commerce, and then when storefronts are able to open, you'll have a lot of people who already know about your product and are aware of it from seeing social media, and then having brand awareness that way.
So launch a business with more of an omni-channel mindset.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Isabel, would you like to add anything?
I guess another big part was, like Jamie said, when COVID first hit, we kind of had to do that pivot. And once again, we were a little bit lost as to what to do. And being able to reach out to the community and other snack startups, other people in the industry really helped to kind of give us that reassurance that we weren't the only ones that were going through this. And being able to tap into that network and not being afraid to ask for help, I think was a really big change for us as well, to be able to like ask and be vulnerable and be like, hey, we don't know what to do, but could you please guide us? And people in the community were really, really supportive. So advice I would say is like, don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to go out and reach out to people that you may not like necessarily think to talk to, but they could give you a lot of perspective for sure.
That's a very good point. So be very community centric as well in the way you develop your business plan. Makes a lot of sense. Mr. Guzzo, through your role on CBC and Dragon's Den, you see, I'll say, hundreds of entrepreneurs on a regular basis. What makes you want to invest in some versus others?
Them. I mean, first and foremost, what catches your eye is somebody calls you up and they have a product. So you say, hey, how can I use this product? How can this product be part of my regular mainstream business, being the movie theater business? How can it make it better for my construction division? How could it be better for my real estate division? That's the first, right? So I'm not a conventional capital investment firm that just sits there and invests silently. I'm actually looking to earn on both ends of my investment, on the building the company, but also getting a benefit from the relationship with my newly invested company in my own business, some synergies as we call them. But ultimately, it's the person, right? So, Samir said something that very few entrepreneurs say. very few entrepreneurs realize that there is no division of life. You know, the truth of the matter is I work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but I also am a father 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I'm also maybe not the best husband, but a husband 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? So now I've got to marry all of that. And so regretfully, many entrepreneurs come in and believe that they can do 9 to 5, or they can do 20 hours a day for the next 20 years, and they can sustain that. And maybe they can, right? And the thing I always like to look at is when I look at the young people, and you know, Jamie and Isabel were on Dragon's Den, and they actually got an offer from myself. And the key was to try and determine how realistic the entrepreneur is. Do they know that they're going to eventually hit a brick wall? Because we all do, whether we like it or not, right? I always like to tell investors, you do realize that the way you're going, if you don't change it, if you don't structure yourself, you're headed for a personal catastrophe. And unfortunately, it is the number one pitfall that every one of us, and I'll use the word success very loosely, who have been successful, are faced with, is that we are very successful in our business lives, and we are a total disaster in our personal lives. So when I'm going to invest money, I need to do two things. I need to figure out, does the product make sense for me? Is the person I'm investing in, not the product, but the person I'm investing in, going to be able to get through all of the pitfalls of being an entrepreneur? Can I help them? And if I can, how am I helping them? Or am I getting into what I call a business marriage that's headed for a divorce? And I'm not interested, right? So, and a lot of times we say this often, are you coachable? Can you, you come to me and you say, I want your money, I want your patronage, I want your mentorship, and I want your connections. Once I've given you all of that, will you actually listen to what I have to say? Or are you a stubborn individual? This coming from a stubborn individual, by the way. So are you a stubborn individual where it's just a waste of time? And it's very important, and it's very different than a conventional investment firm who knows they're going to invest money, they're going to break even on 3 of them, lose money on 4 of them, and make a lot of money on 3 other ones. Overall, they've made 20% return on their money. They're happy. That's not how I invest. It's a different kind of investing. It's more of a human touch. The people at Air Canada, when I travel abroad, know me as the guy who has 2 additional luggages. And it's funny because everybody says, I never thought you would bring so much clothes. I says, no, that's my office moving with me. And then I have 2 luggages with my clothes inside. So I literally move my office with me wherever I go. And I work, and the more I go towards Europe and Asia, the better it is for my work, because I actually am at a different time zone, and I can actually do my work, send my emails, and my staff wakes up to this list of stuff to do, and we're all good, and I can have a vacation. But if I'm in the same time zone, I literally have to take 3 to 4 hours of my vacation day and do my work. I mean, there's no such thing as disconnecting, right? Samir said it, it's integrating your beliefs, your vision, and what you want to build. So I've been through that. I still do it today in the middle of a pandemic. When I did the deal with, when I made the offer, with Jamie and Isabel, they didn't realize it, but there's now a Mr. Sunshine line of popcorn. There's now a Mr. Sunshine line of chocolates. And all of that was in the scope of where I was going to go with their product and say, we can actually bring this in to the theater business, to the buy local trend. Now, did I know COVID was just around the corner? No, because if I did, I would have invested a lot of money in the stock market and just saw my money grow, because, but it is it is one of the things that we felt was going to come, that, you know, going local and the whole international trend was breaking. So sometimes it's also trying to figure out, are the people we're investing in as visionary as we are? Or if we're lucky, more visionaries than we are. And we're actually the conservative ones in that case. And so we're holding them back a little, but we're keeping them from the mistakes, right? But ultimately, I look for somebody that's very coachable, somebody who's willing to learn, and somebody who's willing to work as a team. Because like I said, I'm not a silent investor. I actually, all of the deals I've done on Dragon's Den and outside of Dragon's Den, I speak to my, you know, to those operating partners, as I like to call them, weekly, if not weekly, at least bi-weekly, and I meet them at least once a month. And we go over, you know, financials, we go over P&Ls, and many entrepreneurs don't even realize that in doing a P&L, it's not only about accounting, it's actually about understanding where you're wasting money, where there's a burn, and so forth and so forth. So these are the multiple facades that we go through as an investor.
So I'd like to bounce on two ideas that Mr. Guzzo just shared. One is the mentorship that comes with once you have investors starting to invest. And then the other one is sort of, Samer, come back to your original point that Mr. Guzzo also talked about, how you balance your overall life as an entrepreneur. And since you've lived the industry life, I'll call it, the big corporate life and the entrepreneurial life, talk a little bit about that. So let's start with Samir, and then I'll come back to mentorship after that, Isabel and Jamie. Samir, do you agree that now that after you've done 10 years in corporate life, now you've done several years as an entrepreneur, do you agree that it is, it takes over your life and it becomes more of a it completes you as a person, but that's what's defining you now as a person, an entrepreneur, and it takes over every day in every aspect of your life?
No question, no question.
Really?
And
Okay.
I think the important component I feel is in actually ensuring that you're building up that support structure when you start, but everybody understands that it's going to change relationships, whether it's the person relationship, etc., because you're creating, you know, it's like at the end of it, you're creating something. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of attention, a lot of focus. And usually that's why it's important that we're doing something for reasons we deeply believe in. And that's why it's really important that what we're doing makes sense. So that if we ask others to hold the fort, to be patient, you know, I have friends that have to take an appointment 3 months before to have lunch with me today. They're still great friends, right? So bringing all these together at the beginning is critical. But what I'm discovering is more critical is remembering the people that were patient, remember the people, what they had to go through. It can't be always, oh, I'm the one sacrificing, I'm the CEO or the entrepreneur, and I had to do all this. I realized that people around us have to also sacrifice a lot to just live within an environment where we're doing that. And a lot of situations happen where people help people get to a certain level, the people forget, and they think they've done it on their own. And that breaks your whole structure. And usually that's where the demise of anything that somebody's building starts. So for me, it's really important to integrate everybody. Anytime I get a supporter or cheerleader, whether it's somebody that taught me in the past, whether somebody that is connected to us through the community giving we give, or family, etc., they all there. Every time we do an event, we invite everybody. I need it to fuel my energy to go through the rough patches, but also as a reminder of that without this, I would never have been there. So this is what that integration gets. The opposite of that is a role I had back in the US in a pre-IPO business, where at one point I was really demotivated when I looked at my phone, because that's also work-life integration. A lot of us kind of center our life around work. I realized that every single number I had in it were people I didn't truly care about or agree with and what we believed in. So the beauty of that experiment that I'm going through is actually everybody in my life, in the business front or on the personal life, are well integrated in that, and we actually have a common belief. So when I have to travel 50% of the time, when I have to sacrifice, there's nobody back home being resentful or frustrated. They're actually supporting me and giving me those wings to thrive and rise further.
I'm gonna jump in, MJ, just because I think
yes,
Samir opened something that's very, very Very important. Every once in a while, I go speak to university students, and everybody's expecting the most upbeat speech about how great being an entrepreneur is, and so forth and so forth. And it usually starts off the opposite way. It usually starts off very gray and gloomy, and people say, oh my God, he's like depressing me. I really don't want to be an entrepreneur. And then it ends up being, but this is the exceptional part of being an entrepreneur. People need to understand that when you devote yourself in an obsessive compulsive way to create something, you, without realize it, neglect other stuff. It's not hateful in your neglect. It's obsessive in achieving something, right? So I always like to say, you cannot be a great entrepreneur, a great father, a great husband, a great brother, a great friend, a great son, a great uncle, and a great grandfather. You got to fail at something. And you've got to fail at the thing that's going to hurt you the least. And that you hope the people that, you've let down will understand. As you go up a pyramid of success, what you will realize is that you become isolated, lonely. And the problem is you've got to choose now to believe your own party line that you are the most amazing thing in the world, or be realistic. Too many people fall in the we can do anything, I will achieve everything, and then they crash and burn, right? And it's very important. So just as a personal example, when in 2019, I helped, during the elections, the Conservative Party, and then end of 2019, leadership race is called, and I'm being approached. I didn't sit there alone with my business partners and say, wouldn't I be the greatest person in the world to run? No, I said, what do you guys think? You guys know me. You guys know the way I work. And most of them were positive. But then I had the intelligence of saying, now let me go somewhere where nobody knows me. Let me go into the political sphere and ask the people who know what politics is about, what do you think I would? And I went to get mentors. So you have to remember, at 51 years old, I went out while mentoring so many people, went to get political mentors to tell me, okay, explain to me why this won't work there. I mean, it works here. Why wouldn't it work there, right? Because the truth of the matter is we become obsessive with our child, right? So I always like to say, I have 5 kids, but I say I have 5 children, but I really have 12 kids, 13 kids, because every one of my corporations, every one of my projects is a child that needs to be nurtured, it needs to be taken care of. And too many times I drive by the old neighborhood where I used to live to remind me, and believe it or not, during COVID, that trip was almost daily sometimes, to remind me it's going to be okay. And not because our politicians were saying it was going to be okay. It's because that's where I was 40 years ago. And this is where I was before COVID. And COVID's going to end and we're going to get out of this. And so in a moment of crisis, I launched Popcorn Line. I launched Snack Line. I'm opening a theater in the next few weeks that was built during COVID. I bought 2 shopping centers. You know what I mean? It's almost doubling down on a crisis. But that's not blind risk taking. That is pre-planned risk determination. And that takes a lot of time. It consumes you. Sometimes I'm watching TV and everybody says, you watch a lot of TV. What was on TV for the last 3 hours? I don't even know. I was in a daze. I was in another world, right? And I'm happy to see that somebody as young as Samir, who's younger than me, is experiencing that. And I say, okay, so what I felt, what I went through is normal, right? Because other people felt it. And it is something that the youth needs to be told so that their trip in entrepreneurship is not as painful, because they say it's okay to feel the anxiety. But now I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to let Isabel.
No, those are very, they're really important insights. Thank you for sharing them. Jamie and Isabel, you must clearly benefit from Mr. Guzzo's mentorship on a regular basis, but tell us, what's the value of mentorship? And even before you met Mr. Guzzo in Dragon's Den, did you have any mentors? And is that a critical component that you need if you're building a company? What would you recommend those young entrepreneurs?
Yeah, that's actually what Mr. Guzzo said was a really great segue into what I'm going to say too, because I think in terms of expectation setting for entrepreneurship, that's where the mentorship is really useful in kind of setting the expectations of, where's the mountain that we're going to climb? What does the mountain look like? Because as Isabel said, we were science majors and we don't necessarily see the mountain, what's on the other side, how many hills are on this mountain, how many rocks are in front of us, and things like that. So having that mentorship there to, one, set expectations, but two, also kind of validate our experience. So yes, as young entrepreneurs, we might not always see, what's coming. And it's not until we talk to someone who's been through it that we know it's normal. A lot of my friends personally are in corporate, go to offices, and it's really, I guess, different to understand the life of an entrepreneur and the struggles and the challenges, but also the wins and everything that goes on with entrepreneurship. So I think one role that mentorship and mentors play is, one, validating your experience, kind of saying, what's next, what's upcoming, what are some things we should look for, what are the red flags. And just as a quick example, I remember one of our mentors has told us, in entrepreneurship, it's not going to be a straight trajectory. It actually comes in phases, and we've definitely experienced that. So it could come in, a phase of 2 months, 3 months, where everything's going well, everything is great, we see where we're going, the line is very clear, and then 2, 3, 4 months of being lost and not really knowing where you're going and where the mountain is, what the rocks look like. And then comes another phase of win. So it's less so kind of like that 9 to 5, like you're constantly working towards a goal, but it's more like you're working towards a goal, but you have days where you work 12 hours a day, and then days where things are a little slower. So it's definitely I would say mentorship, expectation setting on that, and then also validation.
It plays a critical role and just to keep you motivated, I guess, as well. And like you said, create realistic expectations. Isabel, how did you guys go about finding some mentors to help you?
That's a good question. I think at the get-go, we had no clue where to look, but the people that we kind of were already connected with within the first McGill community connected with different people that they knew within the industry. And then after we connected with them, if it was a good fit, if we vibed well, if they really understood like the situation that we were going through, they then became our mentor through that. And then we were also recently part of an accelerated program that was specifically for the food space. And so through there, that's where we met a lot more mentorships, and a lot more people within the industry.
That's great. Thank you, Isabel. Samira, I have a question for you. Since you founded this company on your own, a question we often get is, how do you find the talent to help you in this journey? So how did you surround yourself?
Okay, and that was a tough one. I literally had $55,000 in my savings, and I thought this would last me a long time and I could hire people and build it out. It actually defined the culture of Explorance, because we ended up looking for people that are very passionate. They needed a sense of believing in something. They have a lot of grit. They're prone for sacrifice. A lot of them were willing to take half salary cuts for the dream of being part of a company that does things with care for its people. And for me, it built the foundation of my selling skills, because I literally realized everything we do is selling. We sell to our employees so they get engaged. We sell to our families so they're patient with us. We sell to people so they can support us. We sell to customers that can buy from us and renew with us, etc. So I think what it did is it created that notion. And I remember the lead person at the time would come to me consistently and say, Samer, okay, we need you to come and do a selling activity here to the employees. I feel they're starting to not believe. And we went into the B2B software business. A sales cycle for a healthy company is like 9 to 13 months. Imagine a company has 0 customers. Go and try to figure out how you get your first customer. And we did. It took us a while and a lot of wheeling and dealing along the way. And that first customer we got literally 3 months later was calling me on my first vacation after 2 years, first day off in 2 years, and literally crying on the phone because something really bad was happening with the software. And we all cut our vacation and went to do it. So, it's not easy to find the first few. And I think we better have a very good sense of purpose. We have to be very honest. See, I made sure that I was the lowest paid employee in the company until I actually got every single employee at least at par, if not above market. And that took a long time. I think, literally I started at 18,000 a year because they were at 27. And I think I probably, the first time I busted 50K a year, and my previous salary were way higher before, probably 8 years later. And then when the company got healthier and, were able to get, different people, etc., that's history, but it created that notion of trust that if that person is paying themselves less than me, they're not taking any resources. We never took dividends or anything from the business, making sure people understand the story events and the growth. We put integrity as a key value. And it was almost religion at Explorance. You breach integrity, you're out. There's no negotiation on that. So then it forced me to remain honest as well, because many times we get tempted as we grow in our journey. And the premise is if we remember where we came from, we remember who supported us, and I can honor that. Everybody is looking around you is measuring. And I sometimes always say, if my daughter is looking at me today, what decision should I make? And which decision can I look her in the eye one day so I can guide her to do the right thing? And, these kind of things came together. And honestly, my biggest gift was that I was a bit ignorant in terms of what it was. I always refer to it as walking on water. It just felt so easy getting into it. And I thought I'm maybe riding a little donkey. And then I looked down, I'm actually riding a lion. And, everybody's saying, wow, look at this one. He's riding a lion. How courageous they are. Looking, what the hell? This is a lion. How do I get down? And then the company picked up and people followed. But yeah, from a people management standpoint, it's critical to have a mission. It's critical to be honest with them, transparent. Learn the hell out of selling, because you're going to have to sell every time there's bad news until good news start giving you the energy. And if you can, treat yourself with the same disadvantage of those people that are joining at a time where they cannot, unless if you're VC funded or something, you have to start somewhere.
Those are really strong insights. Thank you, Samir. We're almost getting near the end. And Mr. Guzzo, I'd like to ask you, now you've seen so many entrepreneurs and you continue to see so many entrepreneurs across so many industries. Where do you see the next big ideas coming from?
I think the next big ideas will be in redefining what is a big idea. And what I mean by that is, I think there's a real estate bubble. I think there's a stock market bubble. Those bubbles are going to pop eventually. I think that the software companies who can show that their tech actually brings value will thrive, and they will become call it Microsofts of tomorrow, and they'll become the oracles of tomorrow. But there will be the Ubers of today that they may not be around tomorrow, because while they're offering a great service, maybe the truth of the matter is that there's an issue with experience that the customer lives. And you have to remember there's a difference between convenience and sexiness. Brick and mortars is sexy. You go to a mall because it makes you feel good, right? So think about the fashion industry. You look at the poster. I weighed 300 pounds at a certain point, and I saw an Armani ad, and I said, I'm buying that suit. There was no one chance in hell I was ever going to look like that guy, but I bought the suit thinking I would look like the guy. And it made me feel like, it made me feel like American Gigolo or something because I was wearing an Armani suit, but but I wasn't 6'2", and so that feeling, humanity needs it. That is socializing. We need that. And while Uber is convenient, practical, the fact of the matter is there's companies that are worth on paper way more than it makes sense. So when a company has never made a penny of profit, it's always at a negative EBITDA. But because they have 20 million members, they're worth 50 billion. You sit there and you say, but those 20 million members could leave, right? It's like when you buy a PR firm and you're paying a big price and people say, but what are you buying for? Well, look at the cash flow. Okay, at least now I know what you're buying. But, I'm buying it for the client base. Yeah, but those clients they're not welded to you. If the PR firm isn't as good after you bought it, they're going to leave, right? So I think there's going to be a reevaluation of what are good ideas and what are bad ideas. While brick and mortars was a bad idea 5 years ago, I think brick and mortars will be the brand. I think brick and mortars will become like, why didn't I think of that? And some people are going to say, you're kidding me? He's been around for hundreds of years, like, right? And that's what happens all the time. It's like the movie business. The movie business is a real macrocosm of society. I heard recently, when are we going to close it up with all of these superhero movies? What do you mean? Well, it looks like it's an eternity that all we're seeing is superhero movies. But you do realize that there were superhero movies in the 70s, in the 60s, in the 80s. But what's changed is the storytelling way, right? So if I can give you one great example is James Cameron and I are in a bathroom in Vegas and we start a discussion and then we continue the discussion for 2 hours afterwards. And I say to him, how do you feel having the number 1 and number 2 largest box office movies? Back then, it was Avatar and Titanic before Avengers Endgame came out. And he says, well, I feel great, blah, blah, blah. I go, what do you think, those two movies made, why do you think those two movies stood out from the rest? He looks at me and he's almost in a look as if to say, like, you are kidding me, right? And I say, it's the same movie, right? He says, what do you mean? It's Romeo and Juliet. What? Forbidden love, poor guy, rich girl, not allowed, the families don't want. Yeah, okay. And so if I tell the story of Romeo and Juliet like it was told in the 40s, the people won't understand today because it's a different way of storytelling. And then when you get to Avatar, Earth, another planetary world, forbidden love, two different. It's the same story. And I said, oh my God. And he goes, Vince, it's about telling the story. So if we were to tell, the three little pig story, it would sound, who cares if we tell it the way I was told as a child? So you've got to adapt the story, right? You've got to now include that the three little pigs are my three little kids, or, and you got to make it, and you got to engage people. So many of the ideas we have are the same ideas, right? So Samir's company is offering what was done on, let's say, paper and pencil in a different way, in a more engaging way, in a more interesting way. But at the end of the day, he's helping educate people. That's what that's what making the job of education simpler, easier, more. And ultimately, that is what we're doing. We're always evolving. But because we look at things a different way in every generation, we think it's a brand new idea. Oh my God, how did he come up with that? Well, we have a problem and we know the problem was there. And then all of a sudden we found a new way of saying the story. So the Batman of the 50s and the Batman of the 80s and the Batman of 2020, it's the same Batman, only told differently, darker. And I think that that's what's going to happen. I think the big ideas are going to be, because of COVID, life has changed, and it's going to change for many, many years to come. What's not going to change is expenses need to get repaid, deficits need to get repaid. So we're going to have to work. Now, how we're going to work is smarter. We're no longer going to evaluate people's work by 9 to 5, and at 5:01 you punch the card, right? So if the employees you hire are there with you only because of their salary, I'm not interested. I'm just not interested. I have employees. I can be a tough guy, right? I mean, Jamie and Isabel were lucky on Dragon's Den, but I mean, I've made people cry in Dragon's Den, so I can be a mean guy. I have employees that have worked for me for 40 years. They're 55. That means they've been working for me since the age of 15. I can't be that bad of a guy if I've kept them for 40 years. The truth of the matter is, you've got to be a leader. Steve Jobs once said to me, I have no ideas. The only idea I have is I'm almost like a production engineer. I know how to get things done. So some guy comes up with a good idea, and I implement the plan, and I make sure that everybody's motivated, and I make sure and I push everybody at the right level to give me the maximum, and I put all of that together, and that's what created one of the greatest companies, humanity's ever seen, Apple, which, by the way, has gone bankrupt and came back, right? So think about failure. When you think about failure, think about Apple. He founded, got thrown out, they went almost bankrupt, took him out of bankruptcy, and look at them today, right? That is the travel. That is what the future is, right? So there was a time real estate could do no wrong. Then people were going bankrupt in 2007, 8, 9 in the real estate field. Today, I'm wondering why I wasn't in the real estate business even before. I would have been a billionaire by now, at least twice. I mean, and so the ideas are the same. They evolve. Sometimes just a little tweak on an idea. The way you present an idea makes the whole difference. And that's what I think the future is. And I'm a big believer that while we are part of an international community and we should go get talent around the world, I still believe that Canada should have more of its own production. I think we should be more local minded sometimes. I think we should not always look abroad for cheaper, but look locally for better, for quality. I'm not looking for only better margins. I'm looking for better quality. And so that's where I think the mindset's going to be. So I think there's going to be a lot of new ideas coming out very quickly in the next 5 to 10 years. I think we're going to have another roaring 20s boom once we're really out of this COVID craziness.
Thank you. So Mr. Guzzo, Samir, Jamie, Isabel, if I were to attempt in a few sentences to kind of summarize what all the insights you brought forward for our audience, for the alumni, but mostly for all of the entrepreneurs that are listening to you today, I'd say the notion of building a company with a purpose came out often. And with the notion of integrity, trust, transparency, Samir, you certainly talked a whole lot about that, but that being a critical component to being successful in building that company with a purpose. The notion of being realistic and using mentorship as a tool to keep you realistic, and to the notion of failing as knowing that you will fail at something, is just choosing to fail at the thing that will at least hurt you in the process as a way of looking at how to best manage your life. I think was also very insightful. The entrepreneurship is a personal commitment. It's like, at the end of the day, the way I would express it is you all said that it was a life journey, not necessarily a business journey. And to make this as a whole, as an integral part of your life moving forward, to be successful and happy as an entrepreneur. I would like to really thank you for taking the time today. So Jamie, Isabel, Samir, much continued success. And let's keep in touch. I'm sure that our startups, the 450 startups at the center, will be watching and listening, watching your development and listening to this broadcast, and may reach out with some question. And Mr. Guzzo, it's been a real pleasure to get your insights. Thank you for taking the time. And this is not CBC, but the Dobson Center is just as equally interested in entrepreneurship. So thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.